Thank you for those introductions. I'm going to kind of jump right in by playing devil's advocate if I can. And I think one of the concerns that I see more frequently as a consumer is trying to navigate through social media. As Joey mentioned, the trust that consumers place in word of mouth is far greater than the trust that they place in advertising. So how long is it until businesses start making attempts to co-opt sort of the social customs of social media to essentially try to manipulate word of mouth, and how is that likely to play out? And I think, actually, I'd like to address that first to Lane, since Lane is right on the front line of the communication between businesses and consumers. And
Sure. Well, I wonder how they would do that. And I ask that only because I think the big challenge most organizations have right now is that there are just far, far fewer people inside the organization than there are outside of it. And that's really, in my experience, that's the challenge that most of these organizations face generally, is understanding the ramifications or the implications of that. You could, I guess, theoretically, you could sort of pull together an army and pay them some sort of substandard wage to go out to all of these different sites, of which we get a new one pretty much every other day. And you could pay them, I guess, to try and sort of infiltrate or provide content or information that was more beneficial or more positive towards the organization. But even then, it would be a small drop in the ocean of information that's now available online.
That's
right?
happening now. It's not when. It's been going on.
The
most famous example that I can think of is the Walmart RV couple who created a blog to go across the country, because Walmart lets RVs spend the night in their parking lots, and they were going to go visit Walmarts across the country and blog about their experience and the people they met. And it was charming and folksy and awesome until it was discovered they were hired. And the thing is, if they had been upfront about that, because they were former journalists, they were an actual couple, they were actually doing this, they were actually writing awesome stories about real people, and they just hid who they were, and that's what caused the outrage. If they had actually disclosed it, I think they would have gone on and had a wonderful cross-country adventure that we all might have read about still. And there's people paying for sponsoring tweets now. This is why the FTC is deciding to stick their nose into it.
Yeah, I think the challenge. I guess the challenge I have whenever I look at a situation like that is, I can see there would be, and in the classic model, I guess the thing to do is to get really outraged about that. But honestly, who cares? Again, it's a small drop in the ocean of information and content and collaboration and community that's going on online at this moment. Frankly, I think that those organizations, I think Walmart included, would do much better to spend time trying to understand how to actually get their customers to do that, instead of thinking that they had to pay someone to do it.
That's a good point. So maybe we can flip that around just a little bit and talk about some examples where you see companies changing behavior based on what's actually going on online. Do you see examples of companies that are actually changing the way that they do business? And is accountability or openness in terms of participating in the dialogue, that's one thing. But actually changing the way that you do business, can you share some examples of where you see that happening? And looks like you're ready, Elisa.
I was just going to say, I think that part of this is driven by this kind of lemming mentality that started happening with, it's true that all the eyeballs are going to the internet, and it's true, therefore, that people are abandoning the traditional media channels where they might have been reached before. And so, how many people have seen the South Park Underpants Gnome episode? Oh, one person. Awesome. Well, can I tell this quick story, and then I'll So there's an episode of South Park where one of the boys is convinced that there are underpants gnomes who come into his bedroom at night and steal his underwear. And of course, nobody believes him. But one night, the boys decide to stay up late and wait. And indeed, there are underpants gnomes. And they come in and they steal underpants, and they follow the gnomes to their underpants gnomes' lair, where they find piles of underpants and a plan. Step 1, or phase 1, collect underpants. Phase 3, profit. And there's no phase 2, and they never discover the phase 2, and that's how companies have been with social media. It's like, phase 1, oh my God, I've got to have a blog, and I've got to do social media because that's where everyone's going. I got to be there. And then phase 3, I'm going to profit. and they haven't spent any time really trying to figure it out. And I think that that's why people care, is because they're coming into a space that people care about and trying to be there inauthentically. And I think a lot of companies have learned some lessons over the last few years, and there are companies who are, trying to do it better and trying to do it right. What I'm afraid of is that they then turn into, their solution then is to create a person who's going to be their official social media ambassador. I'm thinking of Graco had Lindsay Labresco, and Ford has Scott Monty, and Comcast has, I forget his name, but it's at Comcast Cares on Twitter. But what happens is it becomes about those individuals because we like to be about people. So it's still hard for the companies to, what if Lindsay just left Graco? Now, how many people are still caring about what at Graco says? I don't know. I mean, that'll be an interesting case study if she built up goodwill as a real person engaging for the company, or if it really all in the end was about her being a real person.
I think can I just add, I think I agree, and I think that what we're talking about is the age-old church and state issue, and in every media, when a new media has come along, then the lines have to be kind of defined, and advertisers have to figure out how their messages sit with editorially independent content, and ultimately a solution has to arise which results in trustworthy content, because if it doesn't, then the audience goes elsewhere. And I think right now we're kind of in the bar stage of social media, where there are a lot of people to talk to and a lot of information coming at you, and you've got to judge the source of the information and keep an eye out for ulterior motives and understand what those might be. But I think ultimately, good content, is going to be self-policing and will ultimately rise and be more successful than shill content. Maybe I'm an optimist.
Yeah, I think the key to that really is authenticity, which you cannot create. You either have it and people, respond to that, or it falls apart. And an example I remember of that is Mattel, which, as I'm sure, at least the women in this audience know, owns Barbies, the Barbie line. And Barbie's getting creamed in the marketplace by this other toy line called Bratz. And the Bratz dolls were much more cool with the kids. They were much sexier dolls.
They have
and
back tattoos.
What's that?
They have back tattoos, right?
Back tattoos, yeah. Tramp stamps. Yeah. So these, so Mattel's agency and Technorati got together and created a program and a blog site that was to talk about the desexualization of these dolls and the effect that that's having on young girls and young women. And that sounds like it was a terrific idea and a very, justifiable thing.
Except Barbie's stacked and has a tiny waist. I mean,
That's,
other than that.
Yeah, other than the fact that they had just introduced a Britney Spears Barbie, that's exactly what happened. Is they had a new line of dolls that happened to be their best-selling Barbies that were these, celebrity-style dolls. And the backlash with particularly the moms was ferocious. And so they ended up having to dismantle the whole program and then, essentially apologize for this ill-fated PR effort.
So